Wise man, rest your shoulders and quiet your mind. This video did not come to you by chance. Take a deep breath with me as one who arrives at a moment of rest after a long day. I will guide you step by step through my wisdom, so that each idea finds its place and each decision finds its time. Sit here by my side as one who sits before an old friend. Here I will speak with you as if I were King Solomon himself. Tries not to perform grandeur, but so that you may experience wisdom in an intimate way. Because today I want to share with you one of my most important principles of prosperity for a mind that feels the weight of work. And with this, align your heart to the path of the Word of God that builds. Let us open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 23, where I teach that all hard work brings profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. I give you a simple and clear promise. You will see how this simple verse hides a wisdom that can transform your whole life from now on. I will advise you on several important themes, but I leave you with a warning. You will not necessarily hear from me what you wish to hear, but what you need to hear. And it is very likely that your mind will try to sabotage you, making you want to skip this video. Perhaps you are even feeling that right at this moment. Wise man, that is only the part of you that wants to keep you in the same place where you already are. Therefore, take a deep breath and stop jumping from one video to another so that you may receive with an open heart the wisdom I have for you today. We will have substantial biblical readings interspersed with practical reflections for daily life, and we will have moments of prayer to reposition the spirit and focus. And to begin, bow your heart with me in a brief prayer. Lord, give us light to understand the time to speak and the time to act. Give us self-control to be silent when words get in the way, and courage to work with care when the task demands firmness. Teach us to fear your name in every decision, so that our mouths do not promise what our hands cannot sustain, and so that our work may be testimony and not performance. Amen. If this journey of wisdom already touches your understanding, so comment right here below, God give me wisdom, and take a moment to like this video and subscribe now to the channel, so you may continue receiving counsel that builds up the God-fearing man, because every day I will open the scriptures with you and share my wisdom little by little, so that the word may refine your decisions and you may be prosperous and blessed. Speak to align, work to build, wise man. There is an invisible weight that falls upon the man who speaks much and does little, and there is a powerful lightness upon the one who speaks only enough to align, but gives himself to work with diligence and silence. I, Solomon, learned from the many faces of life that words may prepare the ground, but it is the work that raises the columns of the house. Many speak of dreams, few build projects. Many promise faithfulness, few remain firm until the end. The difference is in intention, but above all in attitude. What I will show you now through the very word I wrote is how the contrast between empty speech and acting with dedication transforms the practical life, the finances, the bonds, and even the reputation of a man. Let us open the scriptures in Proverbs chapter 14, beginning in verse 15 through 24. I said there that the simple believe everything they hear, but the prudent give careful thought to their steps. I said that the wise fear the Lord and turn from evil, but the fool is hot-headed and feels secure. I reinforced that wisdom is cautious and foolishness is reckless. And it was in that same passage that I clearly affirmed, in all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. What I meant here, God-fearing man, is that even good intention can become a burden if it does not turn into action. It is the work that confirms the word. It is the sweat that honors the plan. See, even the fool when silent may appear wise, but the man who speaks without acting is revealed a fool in the eyes of time. What I am showing you is that your prosperity does not come from beautiful speech, but from faithful work. Reputation, harvest, respect. All this is built with firm steps, not with empty promises. Let us now go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 13. There I revealed a principle that governs heaven and earth. There is a time appointed for every purpose, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to speak and a time to be silent, a time to build and a time to stop. I wanted to teach that work is not only a necessity but a gift, and that a man should rejoice in what he does with his own hands. What I want you to understand, wise man, is that there is a sacred order in time, and disregarding this rhythm brings frustration. There are moments when silence is worth more than 1,000 words, and there are hours when only action can bring peace to the soul. Each phase demands a certain posture, and wisdom is in discerning what is necessary today, without rushing into the future, nor imprisoning yourself in the past. I would like to read now for you the beginning of Song of Songs, chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. There I used images of vineyards and flocks to speak of personal responsibility. I said, I'm dark but lovely, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. And further on, the beloved recognized, do not stare at me because I am darkened by the sun. My brothers were angry with me and made me take care of their vineyards, but my own vineyard I neglected. God-fearing man, this is more than poetry. It is a warning. How many of us care for the tasks of others, solve the problems of others, but leave our own house, our own dreams and plans abandoned? Tending to your flock is your responsibility. There is no honor in seeming active, while within your own vineyard is withering. What I meant to teach is, take care of what God entrusted to you, with zeal, with presence, with truth. Very well, now turn back a few pages with me and read in Proverbs, chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. There I taught that the heart of man may plan his way, but the Lord directs his steps, and that all a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. So I advised, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. What I meant by this, wise man, is that planning is necessary, but submitting plans to God's will is vital. You may have a good idea, but without prayer, without spiritual alignment, it may become vanity. It is not only about acting, but about acting with direction. The steps of the righteous are confirmed. When he trusts more in God than in his own wisdom, plan, but before that pray, align with heaven, and then work with confidence. There is a verse of my father David that I love very much. It is in Psalm 37, verses 23 through 26. He wrote, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." Further on, he affirms, "I was young, and now I am old. Yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their children begging for bread." God-fearing man, these words of my father always accompanied me. What he taught us is that constancy is a silent testimony of faith. God does not abandon the man who remains steadfast, who does not give up, who insists on doing what is right even when no one sees. Daily work, honest effort, commitment to good. All this is seen by heaven, and there is no greater honor than to see the fruits being harvested, not only by you but by your descendants. Stability is born of firm steps, not of shortcuts. Many men, when gathering to discuss a project, believe that the mere fact of talking about something already puts them in motion. But this is a great deception. Meetings without clarity of purpose, where much is said and little is decided, become only the hiding place of procrastination. The wisdom I shared in the verses you just heard makes it clear, time and words must be used with purpose. For when you speak more than you act, the cost is high. Not only time is lost, but trust. Each promise not kept, each announcement greater than the delivery, each goal postponed without necessity, undermines credibility. And God-fearing man, once trust is broken, it takes much to rebuild it. Therefore, speak only what you are ready to sustain with your work. And if you are not ready yet, be silent and work in the shadows until your work speaks for you. The planning fallacy is insidious. The human mind, desiring control, tends to overestimate what will be done and underestimate the obstacles. The wise man must be aware that planning is necessary, but ruminating ideas without turning them into action creates restlessness. Have you noticed how sometimes just thinking too much about a subject leaves you exhausted? As if you had done something, but in reality not even moved a stone. This happens because there is a gap between intention and behavior, and this gap is only closed with decision and movement. The mind rests when the feet obey. The heart calms when the hands work. Anxiety is not fought only with prayer, but also with action. Faith needs movement to become alive. And diligent work is a form of obedience that heals the soul. It is at this point that many get lost. They confuse talking about their plans with being committed to them. They share their dreams out loud, as if the echo of words made them real. But the God-fearing man understands that words are only the beginning. They align, organize, give form, but it is the work that seals, that establishes, that validates. When you decide that you will speak only to align and no longer to delay, you begin to see time working in your favor. It is like the farmer who stops discussing the type of seed and finally digs the ground, stretches out his hand and plants. The time of harvest only comes to the one who works, not to the one who merely daydreams. There is a silent proverb in the construction site. The builder who measures the plumb line before raising the wall builds straight and builds only once. But the one who talks much and measures little builds crooked and must tear down to start again. This applies to projects, to businesses, to relationships. The wise man is not in a hurry to raise the wall. He first marks the plumb line. He plans with sobriety, checks the foundation, and then builds with excellence, and so his effort is not wasted. He does it only once, and because he does it with care. But the talker, the hasty, the impulsive, lives redoing, fixing, justifying, and he loses time, resources, energy, and peace. Therefore, if you want to build something lasting, be like the builder who measures first, speaks only what is necessary, and builds with care. The speech that edifies is the one that brings clarity, not confusion. It is the one that defines the objective, sets the deadline, establishes the measure. But after that it must cease, so that the hands may enter into action. The God-fearing man speaks to bring clarity, but works to deliver. He does not get lost in promises, because he knows the weight they carry. When he makes a promise, he does it with sobriety, not out of the emotion of the moment. And when he fulfills, he does it with excellence, for he understands that his word is a testimony. When a man delivers more than he promised, he honors the name he carries, but when he promises more than he delivers, he strays from integrity. Let your word be brief, and your delivery abundant. Now think with me. How many times have you found yourself postponing a project because you were waiting for the right moment? How many times have you preferred to reorganize the to-do list instead of completing the first task? Perfectionism, disguised as planning, is one of the most subtle forms of fear. The wise man knows that you only learn by doing, you only mature by delivering. And even when the work is not perfect, it is still proof of diligence, whereas the silence of one who does not act, even if it seems prudent, is sterile. God blesses what moves, even if with small steps. And it is in this constant rhythm, even if imperfect, that reputation is built, income, legacy. 1 stone per day, but always 1 stone more. In the world of business and finance, the principle is the same. Talking too much can close doors. Acting with consistency opens the way. Her man who promises to deliver something and fulfills it with excellence will be remembered, recommended, rewarded. But one who exaggerates in speech, yet fails in practice, carries a fragile reputation. And reputation, God-fearing man, is like glass. Once cracked, even if repaired, it will never be the same. Therefore, speak modestly, promise cautiously, and work with zeal. God is not impressed with speech, but he honors sweat, and so do men. In the end, the one who fulfills more than he says will always have more than he needs. I want you to carry this with you. Wisdom begins in the heart, expresses itself in speech, but only materializes in work. Without practice, intention is just a shadow, an illusion. The man who fears the Lord must be known for his firmness, his reliability, his ability to transform plans into deliveries. This man is like a tree planted by streams of water that bears fruit in its season, and whose leaves do not wither, for his root is not in words but in action. Let us now resume our reading, wise man. I want to open with you the book of Proverbs chapter 12 from verse 11 to 14. There I made it clear, he who tills his land will have bread in abundance, but he who pursues fantasies lacks judgment. I was pointing directly to the contrast between diligent work and unproductive delusions. In other words, there are those who prefer to dream instead of doing. Imagine instead of sowing, and these will never see fruit in their hands. And more, I added, by the words of the mouth, a man is filled with good, but it is the fruit of the hand's work that will truly reward him. Each action, each delivery made with dedication becomes legitimate provision. It is not much talk that ensures sustenance. It is doing with excellence. And I concluded by saying that a man will be rewarded according to what his hands have done, not according to what his words have promised. That is the key. What comes out of the mouth may inspire, but what comes out of the hands builds. I will now lead you to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verses 7 to 10. There I said, "Go and eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with a glad heart, for God has already approved your works." What I meant is that the work approved by God not only produces results, it also produces pleasure, satisfaction, and a sense of mission accomplished. I continued, "Let your garments always be white, and let oil not be lacking on your head. That is, remain dignified, clean, ready. Live life with the wife you love, all the days of your existence. For this is your portion in the labor with which God has burdened you under the sun." And I ended with the counsel you need to hear carefully. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the grave where you are going, there is no more work, knowledge, or wisdom. God-fearing man of the opportunity to build is now. The time to plant, correct, restart is while you still breathe. Work with vigor, for time does not return. And the hands that fold today will reap emptiness tomorrow. Now I want to share with you a passage I wrote in Song of Songs, chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. There I said, "Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, and jealousy is as unyielding as the grave. Its coals are blazing fire, a flame of the Lord." What I meant, wise man, is that true commitment, the one born of zeal and dedication, cannot be bought, cannot be forged. It burns with intensity like divine fire. And I added, many waters cannot quench this love, nor can rivers sweep it away. If one were to offer all the wealth of one's house for this love, it would be utterly despised. This is the essence of care, of work done out of love, of effort driven by covenant. There are bonds that become sacred, and there are works that only flourish when done with the whole heart. It is not just about doing, but doing with faithfulness. This is the work that prospers before God. Very well, now let us return to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, starting from verse 1 to 6. Listen carefully. If you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, and carefully follow all his commandments, then the Lord will set you high above all the nations of the earth. These blessings will come upon you and overtake you, if you obey the voice of the Lord. I was showing that true prosperity is the fruit of practical obedience, not just emotional devotion. I continued saying, you will be blessed in the city and in the field. Blessed will be the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your land and of your livestock. The blessing extends where there is coherence between word and work. I also affirmed, blessed shall be your basket and your kneading trough. Blessed shall you be when you come in and when you go out. In other words, in every cycle of life, the obedient hand will be sustained. It is not by luck, it is by faithfulness. Obedience is not an emotion. It is a posture that transforms actions into harvests. When one works in covenant with the Word, heaven backs every effort done with fear and diligence. Finally, let us go together to the first Psalm. Psalm 1, verses 1 to 3. There my father David wisely taught, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, does not stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night." And see what he added. "This man will be like a tree planted by streams of water, that yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does prospers." What David wanted to make clear is that the prosperity of the righteous man is born from daily discipline, from his intimacy with the Word, and from the constancy of doing what is right, even when no one sees. This is the foundation of profit, faithfulness to what God says, applied with diligence to what his hands do. God-fearing man, if your roots are in the right place, your fruit will come at the right time. When the mouth anticipates commitment, the price is always high. That is why there are so many leaders who speak in the name of progress, but live immersed in meetings that decide nothing, plans that never leave the paper, and schedules adjusted to fit inertia. When I said that speech leads to poverty, I was speaking of this, the false comfort of ideas that never become actions, the deception of believing that discussion is the same as accomplishment. Wise men align with words, but build with works. It is the delivery that proves the truth of the speech. It is the work that confirms the intention. Discussing without deciding is like marking a path without taking a step, and each delayed step is a fruit that fails to be born. When the announcement is greater than the structure, when the promise is bolder than the delivery can support, what is reaped is distrust and frustration. And I know many do this with good intention. They want to show vision, they want to motivate, but they forget that wisdom begins with sobriety. The God-fearing man speaks with clarity, but acts with precision. He is not dazzled by ideas, he weighs them. And if what he dreams is greater than what he can support, he waits, prepares, matures, and only then delivers. This is the path of credibility. Speak to align and not to delay. Plan as one who fears the Lord, and execute as one who knows that time is short. The mind of the fool ruminates and ruminates until it becomes heavy. The heart of the wise man, on the other hand, rests when the steps are concrete, when the plan becomes practice and the idea turns into action. Psychologists call this the planning fallacy, others the gap between intention and behavior. But what I tell you is older than any science. While you only think, you carry. But when you act, you move. That is why many live anxious, full of ideas, goals, desires, but without ground, without direction, without fruit. Doing with diligence is the remedy for the restless soul. It organizes chaos, brings peace to the mind, and restores to the heart the joy of moving forward. He who works his land, even in silence, will reap. But he who gives himself to fantasy, distractions, shortcuts, ends up exhausted and empty. Therefore, wisdom commands to look at what is before you and ask, what has God placed in my hands today? And then do it with excellence. For there are those who dream of distant fields, but forget to water the garden they already have. The God-fearing man is faithful in the little, attentive to his flock, diligent with his plantation. And that is why God makes him prosper. When the focus is constant, the fruit is certain, and when constancy is cultivated, the result is reliable. Words feed vision, but only sustained work generates provision. Let me now tell you the little parable of the bricklayer and the chalk. Imagine two men called to build a wall. The first, before starting, takes a chalk and marks the exact plumb line on the ground, checks the foundation, calculates the alignment, and only then begins to stack the bricks. The second, impatient, prefers to rely on his experience and immediately starts laying one brick on top of the other. Apparently both are building, but when the wall is finished, only one is firm, straight, and ready to bear weight. The other will have to tear down and start again. What this story teaches, wise man, is simple. He who measures first does it right the first time. He who speaks before thinking promises more than he delivers, and the price of haste is rework. Speech has its role. It is a lamp for the feet, a map for the path, a contract of commitment. But it only fulfills its mission if accompanied by diligence. Speaking to bring clarity is wisdom. Speaking to impress is vanity. When you open your mouth, have a purpose. When you promise, have a deadline. When you commit to something, have a measure. For God is not pleased with promises made in excitement. He honors the delivery made in reverence. It is not about silencing, but about measuring each word well, so that your word is reliable, and your work excellent. This is how the character of a man who builds is formed, not with empty speeches, but with consistent actions. And see, it is not enough to deliver anything. It is necessary to deliver with quality. An incomplete project, a rushed delivery, a work without review, are noises that erase the shine of intention. Care is in the details. In the second look, the last verification, the willingness to go back and adjust what was not good. The God-fearing man is not a perfectionist. He is responsible. He understands that his work is a testimony, that his work speaks when he is silent, and that every product delivered, every service provided, carries the name he built before God and men. That is why he takes care. He takes care so that what he begins ends well, so that what he promises is fulfilled, and so that every delivery is worthy of being called an offering. Zeal is not weakness, it is silent strength. Care is not slowness, it is strategy. Working with excellence is not just a competitive advantage, it is an expression of reverence. When you organize your deadlines, when you review your execution, when you seek honest feedback, you are telling the world, I take this seriously. And more than to the world, you are telling God, I manage well what you have entrusted to me. This is the true professionalism of the wise man, not seeking applause, but being found faithful, not running to appear productive, but walking with consistency. For in the end, it is better to deliver one work in time and truth than 1,000 plans launched without any fruit. Now, take a deep breath with me. Close your eyes for a moment and let this word penetrate your spirit. Take a brief pause in silence and talk to God about what you already know you need to align. Perhaps it is a promise made that has not yet become a delivery, or a work begun that cries out for more care. Also, leave here in the comments your testimony or experience, and if you can, pray for another wise man who shared something there. For when two God-fearing men unite in prayer, there is edification, there is comfort, there is covenant in the Spirit. Working with care is not blind activism. Now, God-fearing man, let us walk toward an even deeper discernment. If before we spoke about the difference between speaking without doing and acting with diligence, here, I want to teach you that excessive action without discernment is also a deviation from the path of wisdom. Because not all doing is virtue. Doing without care, without discernment, without fear, is agitation that exhausts, but does not edify. I'm not talking about working more, but about working with more quality, more strategy, more fear of God in each choice. There is a very clear difference between zeal and desperation. Zeal generates consistency. Desperation generates unproductive repetition. And when you act in desperation, you end up compromising the value of your delivery, the firmness of your name, the peace of your spirit. The wise man, therefore, is not only active, he is discerning, patient, and responsible for what his hands build. Let us now open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 24 from verse 3 to 6. There I wrote that the house is built with wisdom, established with understanding, and filled with valuable treasures through knowledge. In other words, to build something solid, whether in work, business, or relationships, you need more than strength and desire. You need to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how far it can take you. I continued saying, with proper guidance, a war is waged, and with many counselors, victory becomes possible. What I taught here is that care begins in planning, in analysis, in listening to counsel. He who throws himself forward without thinking fights the wrong battles, wastes energy, and often compromises his reputation. I will now go to chapter 21 of Proverbs, from verse 5 to 8. There I made it clear that well-thought-out plans lead to abundance, but he who acts in haste ends in poverty. And I also taught that those who act deceitfully walk toward destruction, while the upright are protected by their integrity. What I meant here, wise man, is that care is in the details, and that haste robs the process, and every man who wants to reap solid fruit must sow with calm, with discernment, with truth, even if the result takes longer. What is generated with integrity remains. What is born of anxiety dissolves easily. Very well. Now I will read Ecclesiastes chapter 5, starting at verse 10 and going until 12, then skipping to 18 through 20. There I taught that whoever loves money never has enough, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with gain. The abundance of the worker, however, gives him peace in his sleep. whether with little or much. But accumulation without purpose turns into anguish and restlessness. And later I concluded by saying that the work God gives man so that he may rejoice in his days is a gift, a present, that is, working with gratitude, with moderation, with reverence, is a form of worship. God-fearing man, what I wanted to show here is that there is a limit to doing, and there is rest reserved for the one who knows how to balance effort with contentment. Let us now go to Song of Songs, chapter 4, verses 12 to 16. There I use the image of the enclosed garden, watered with care, cultivated with patience, and that only blooms when the wind blows in its season. This is a picture of care, in relationships, in work, in any area that requires faithfulness. A well-cared-for garden is not formed in a single day, but it becomes fruitful because it was protected, watered, and respected. If you want to enjoy mature fruit in your life, wise man, take care of the process. Do not trample on the seeds, nor harvest before the time. And finally, returning to the book of Exodus, chapter 23, from verse 1 to 9. God commands the people not to spread false reports, not to follow the crowd in doing evil, not to be swayed by bribes, to treat both the poor and the foreigner with justice. This passage shows that even in dealing with others, there is a measure of care that must guide our actions. What is at stake here is community responsibility. That is, what you do impacts others, and therefore, zeal for truth, uprightness in decisions, work, and honesty in relationships must be non-negotiable principles. God-fearing man, working with care also means choosing justice, even when it seems to cost more, even when no one is watching. The greatest mistake of the hasty man is to think that doing much is the same as doing well. There is a striking difference between action and construction, between effort and edification. Haste makes noise, but does not lay a foundation. Blind activism is a race without direction. It is like the builder who raises walls before checking the foundation. What seems like agility is often disguised anxiety, and what seems like effort may just be fear of stopping and honestly looking at what needs to be adjusted. The God-fearing man knows that working with care is not procrastination. It is planning with wisdom, acting with responsibility, and resting in God's timing. There are many who live trapped in a cycle of rework, unfulfilled promises, delays that corrode their image. And when they look back, they realize that what they built was not the fruit of zeal, but the result of haste, of urgency without purpose. When I say speak less, measure better, deliver right the first time, I am not being harsh. I am being faithful to the principle of wisdom. One well-done delivery is worth more than 10 half-done. It is not about quantity, it is about consistency. A trustworthy name is worth more than any appearance of productivity. Care is also an ethical standard, and not just a technical one. The wise man is the one who understands that his word is a promise, and his delivery is a testimony. There is a direct connection between integrity and prosperity. He who acts with justice sleeps in peace. He who manipulates to gain quick advantage ends up losing everything in due time. Honesty, even if it seems slower at first, always builds a solid path, whereas cleverness without fear may open doors in the short term, but they will close hard in the time of truth. A reliable professional, a just leader, a consistent father. All of them have something in common. Their actions follow principles, not impulses. They know that a negotiation is not just a contract, it is a covenant of the soul. That a product delivered is not just merchandise, it is an extension of their character. And that care in every detail reveals how much he fears the Lord and honors others in his work. Ethics, therefore, is not just a value. It is a strategy that sustains the financial and relational life of the God-fearing man. The man who sets honest weights, who defines correct measures, who does not hide flaws. This man builds a reputation that endures through seasons. He does not need to hide behind excuses. He does not need to fear exposure, because everything he built is established on the rock of truth. I myself wrote that dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, and that integrity protects the upright. This means that zeal for what is right, even when no one is watching, is the greatest spiritual and emotional insurance anyone can have. My father David used to say that a good name is worth more than great riches. And I came to understand over time the weight of that statement. The wisdom that preserves life is not only in books, it is in silent decisions, in the no you give to bribery, in the door you close to shortcuts, in the yes you give to truth, even if it costs you something. The wise man, by preserving his name, also preserves his peace, because he knows that his identity is not in what he achieves, but in how he achieves it. Have you ever stopped to think that the same effort you dedicate to work should also be dedicated to your relationships? When I read Song of Songs, I see there the image of someone who diligently seeks the beloved, who does not conform to absence, who commits to presence. This is the same posture that a God-fearing man should have with his family, with his friends, with his projects. Commitment is zeal, it is presence, it is resistance to discouragement. And the one who applies this same care in everything he does will be remembered as someone worthy of trust. Finally, wise man, understand that every dishonest choice, every cut in care, every hidden deceit is a debt in the accounting of the soul. It is like a liability that keeps accumulating, generating fear, guilt, instability. Prosperity without justice is an illusion. It may even look like abundance, but it is full of cracks, of pressures, of anguish that corrode from within. Therefore, if you want to live with peace and stability, be faithful in the little, zealous in the process, and integrous even in the details that no one sees. For God sees everything, and honors those who work with reverence and truth. Let us now open the scriptures again, starting with Proverbs chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. There I taught that dishonest scales are abominable in the eyes of the Lord, but the just weight is his delight. Pride precedes ruin, but humility attracts wisdom. Integrity guides the upright, while falsity destroys the unfaithful. And more, in the day of anguish, riches will not serve as refuge, but justice delivers from death. The righteous are sustained by their integrity, but those who walk in crooked paths will end up reaping their own deceit. Do you perceive the contrast? Those who walk with justice have their path affirmed by God. Those who cheat out of greed will stumble into the very trap they laid. I wrote this to warn the God-fearing man about where to place his trust, not in schemes, but in the righteousness that God approves. Now let us go to Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verses 1 through 12. There I affirmed that a good name is worth more than fine perfumes, and the day of death more than the day of birth. For it is better to go to a house of mourning than to one of feasting. For there the heart of man is instructed. Better is the rebuke of the wise than the songs of fools, and patience is superior to pride. Wisdom protects, gives strength, and preserves the life of those who possess it. See, wise man, it is not about exalting suffering, but about understanding that sobriety makes us attentive, and that living responsibly before eternity is a calling for those who fear the Lord. Allow me now to return to Song of Songs, chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. There I described a woman who in her bed sought her beloved but did not find him. She rose, went out into the streets of the city, called for him with perseverance, and when she finally found him, she did not let him go. What does this teach us? That true bonds require diligence, that solid relationships are not born of complacency, but of constant pursuit, of presence that insists even in the face of silence. The God-fearing man knows that it is not enough to start well. It is necessary to remain with zeal day after day. Now listen carefully to what is written in Deuteronomy, chapter 25, verses 13 to 16. God commanded the people of Israel not to have two weights nor two measures, but to use just measures, correct balances. For the Lord abhors those who act dishonestly, but loves those who practice righteousness, even in the details. This, wise man, applies today to your routine, to your work, to your dealings. Faithfulness in the smallest details is what sustains the Lord's favor. It is no use raising your hands in the temple if your hands are dirty in the marketplace. And to close this block of readings, let us now go to Psalm 112, which my father David wrote, and I want to read verses 1 to 10. He said, "Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. His descendants will be mighty in the land. His house will be filled with wealth. He is generous, just, and compassionate. He will never be shaken. His memory will be eternal. He will not fear bad news, for his heart is steadfast in the Lord. He distributes with generosity. He sustains the poor, and his righteousness endures forever. What my Father is teaching here is that the man who walks with integrity, the one who is constant in good, that man will be remembered, will be respected, and will have his life established on eternal foundations. One of the greatest dangers that hover over the heart of man is to imagine that immediate results justify shortcuts, to think that by achieving some momentary gain, he can neglect the principles that sustain the long term. But, God-fearing man, everything that is built on fraud collapses at the moment of truth. Just as accounting reveals what is really happening in finances, there is also an accounting of the soul, which is recorded with each choice, each deviation, each truth omitted out of convenience. The problem is that when the moral balance of life is ignored, hidden debts accumulate, fear, guilt, loss of peace. He who reaps advantages by crooked paths carries within himself a silent spiritual liability, and in the time of adversity finds no refuge, because his foundations are not integrous. Now think with me. Have you noticed that the most stable people, the ones who transmit confidence and walk in peace, are precisely those who practice care with excellence? They are not necessarily the fastest, nor the loudest, but those who maintain a high standard even behind the scenes. The care that edifies is not in doing much, but in doing right. It is in promising with sobriety and fulfilling with firmness. It is in establishing margins, reviewing processes, assuming responsibilities without shifting blame. A wise man does not seek immediate brilliance. He plants deep roots to withstand the seasons of life. And the more he takes care of what he does, the more God entrusts him with what is to come. If you stop to observe the men who stand out as references, not only in results, but in respect and consistency, you will see a pattern. They have a posture of vigilance and zeal. They know that excellence is not chance, it is a daily decision. And here is a powerful principle. Care, when it becomes constant practice, becomes culture. And the culture of excellence attracts open doors, lasting alliances, and trust in the marketplace. What I tell you, wise man, is that your reputation is like a wall. It is not built in a hurry, but brick by brick, faithfulness by faithfulness. In contrast, blind activism is a silent thief. It steals focus, health, quality, because it makes you confuse movement with progress. He who lives running without measuring the path is always fixing what he himself disorganized. And at the end of the day, his productivity is a house of cards, made of corrections and rescheduled promises. What I am telling you is that haste is not the ally of wisdom. Haste does not produce lasting fruit. Care is not slowness, it is direction with awareness. And he who moves with criterion goes farther than the one who only moves fast. Take this with you as a standard of life: realistic promises, consistent deliveries, continuous learning, and humility to review mistakes without seeking scapegoats. Do you want to be remembered as a reliable man? Then let every word of yours carry the weight of responsibility, and let every delivery of yours be a reflection of your faith and your fear of God. We are not talking here about perfectionism, but about a commitment to truth, justice, and care. Because the Lord sees not only what we do, but how we do it. With what heart, with what intention. God-fearing man, there is a peace that only the careful know. It is the peace of laying your head on the pillow knowing that what was done with excellence, that the bills were paid with justice, that the commitments were honored with integrity, and that there is nothing hidden that threatens the future. This peace is worth more than any bonus or contract signed in haste. What I show you here is that care, righteousness, zeal are legitimate shortcuts to a stable prosperity, approved by heaven and sustained by the trust of men. And more than that, care trains us for faithfulness in the little things. For he who is faithful in the little will be entrusted with much. Do not despise the details of the backstage, the gestures that no one sees. It is there that God tests intention and prepares the ground for promotion. He who wants to grow with God does not skip steps, does not fake results, does not manipulate appearances. He grows from the inside out, with roots established in the Word and fruits that withstand the seasons. Therefore, wise man, hear what I tell you with an attentive heart. Care is not just a virtue of management, it is an expression of reverence. It is worship in the form of action. It is you saying to the Lord, I take seriously what you have entrusted to me. It is building as if each brick were for the temple, as if each project were an altar, as if each bond were sacred. When you live like this, even men recognize, but above all, God is pleased. Therefore, I believe that the Lord has brought you this video, so tell him that you are taking this content seriously. Leave your like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. The compound effect of consistency. There is a silent force that transforms lives, that builds homes, that strengthens reputations. It is the force of consistency, and this is what I want to speak to you about now. Consistency is the cement of wisdom. It is the invisible link between purpose and result. The God-fearing man understands that it is not only about starting with intensity, but about continuing with faithfulness. The value is not in isolated acts, but in the accumulation of small gestures done with excellence, in the patience of those who sow without seeing, but know that the harvest will come. The world is enchanted by speed, but the kingdom of God honors steady rhythm. What transforms is not the spark, but the flame that does not go out. And the compound effect of consistency is this: small correct choices repeated with reverence, generating great fruits at the right time. Let us begin this reading with one of my oldest and most practical counsels, written in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 to 11. Listen closely. Here I call the attention of the sluggard and invite him to observe the wisdom of the ant. I said, Go to the ant, you sluggard, observe her ways, and be wise. Without chief, overseer, or ruler, she prepares her food in summer and gathers her provision in harvest. What I wanted to show here is that time is a gift and preparation is an act of wisdom, because those who constantly delay what needs to be done are surprised by need at the wrong time. And I continued, warning, How long will you lie there? When will you get up from your sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest? And poverty will come upon you like a robber, and scarcity like an armed man. It is hard to hear this, I know, but the truth is that constant neglect has an invisible cost. And when the alarm sounds, it is already too late. The wise man understands the rhythm of life. He works with vision, prepares with diligence, and does not hand his future over to chance. Let us now go to Proverbs, chapter 27, verses 23 to 27. There I returned to the metaphor of the flocks, and wrote, Be diligent to know the state of your flocks, and give careful attention to your herds. For riches do not endure forever, nor does a crown last from generation to generation. What I am seeing here is that the true provider observes, updates himself, reviews his paths. He does not manage in the dark, but knows the details, understands the cycles, protects what sustains his house. And I went on explaining, When the hay is removed and new growth appears, the lambs will provide you with clothing. The goats will bring the price of a field, and the milk of the goats will supply food for you, your household, and your servants. In other words, there is reward for those who care. There is provision for those who persevere. What I wanted to make clear in this passage is that financial security, stability in relationships, consistency in work, all these blessings are the fruit of an attentive heart and faithful hands. Nothing flourishes by itself. Everything requires cultivation, and what is cultivated with consistency flourishes with stability. Very well, God-fearing man. I now want you to go with me to Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 1 to 6. There I said, Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again. What I meant by this is that generosity and confident action are seeds planted in unseen fields, and in God's time they sprout. I continued, Divide your portion to 7, yes to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. If the clouds are full of rain, they pour it upon the earth. And whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie. In other words, there are factors beyond your control. And so, waiting for perfect conditions is a mistake that paralyzes. And I completed. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind, nor how the bones are formed in a pregnant woman's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, who makes all things. Therefore, sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let not your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. What I wanted to teach here is that consistency is an act of faith, not of certainty. It is persevering even without evidence. It is acting without visible guarantees, because the trust is in God, not in circumstances. The wise man plants every day, because he knows that in the Lord's time, the seed will flourish. Now, let me also read in Song of Songs, chapter 8, verses 11 to 14. I spoke of Solomon's vineyard, that he had a vineyard in Baal-Hamon, which was entrusted to keepers. Each one was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver for its fruit. But I said, my own vineyard is mine to give. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon, and 200 for those who tend its fruit. What this means, wise man, is that there is a personal responsibility that no one can assume for you. There are vineyards that are yours, projects, relationships, commitments, and you must give account of how you cultivate them. In the following verse I heard, you who dwell in the gardens, companions, listen for your voice. Let me hear it. Come away, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices. This is an image of reciprocity, of ongoing devotion, of attention that does not fade with time. What I am showing here is that even love, the most intimate bonds, require consistency, repeated dedication, progressive care. What is ignored dies, but what is watered every day remains and flourishes. And to close this block of readings, I want to open with you the book of Psalms, chapter 90, verse 12. This is a request made by Moses, Kalos, and he says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. What my heart understands here is that time is a teacher, but it only becomes wisdom when perceived as finite. To number the days is not to fear death. It is to value life. It is to know that each dawn is a chance, that each task done faithfully is a brick in eternity. The God-fearing man does not waste his days. He manages each one as a gift and adds them up as a legacy. Because those who live with this sense of eternity transform even the simplest act into worship. Consistency has no stage, but it has weight. It does not draw attention, but it sustains everything. The wise man does not delude himself with spotlights. He understands that it is in the backstage that God forges the foundations of a respected life, of a preserved name, of a stable home. While the world celebrates quick results, the God-fearing man honors the process, respects time, understands that excellence does not come from improvisation, that which endures, that which grows with roots, that which withstands storms. All of this is the fruit of a silent yet unshakable commitment to faithfulness. The world sees the stage, but God observes the backstage. And it is there in the secrecy of routine that true character is proven, that real value is built, that divine favor finds rest. God-fearing man, I ask you, how many businesses have started full of enthusiasm, but died for lack of discipline? How many relationships promised everything at the beginning, but were corroded by daily neglect? Consistency is like the mortar that binds bricks. Without it, the wall cannot stand. It is the habit of doing well what needs to be done, even when no one is watching, even when the motivation does not come. What I learned after kingdoms, battles, alliances, and projects is that God honors the one who is faithful in little, not the one who starts with promises, but the one who finishes with delivery. For in the kingdom, the glory is not in starting well, but in persevering with reverence to the end. It is necessary to understand that consistency is not only discipline, it is also emotional wisdom. The mind of the wise man finds rest when his steps follow a coherent path, when he knows what needs to be done and does it without bargaining with his own laziness, without waiting for motivation to come first. The heart of the diligent finds peace precisely because he does not live in debt to himself. He acts, he delivers, he fulfills. And in this, there is rest. Because when the work advances, anxiety recedes. When commitments are honored, the soul breathes. It is not an illusory peace, it is a built peace. Consistency is, in this sense, an antidote against restlessness, against mental overload, against the weight of always being in debt to oneself and to others. Many think that excellence is tied to great talents or sudden inspirations. But I tell you, excellence is the fruit of rhythm. It is the result of one who commits to daily improvement. The wise man does not seek perfection. He seeks consistency. He errs but learns, he falls but rises, and returns to work with even more wisdom. Consistency allows even failures to become steps. It transforms mistakes into lessons, delays into adjustment, failures into maturity. Without it, even the most precious gift becomes sterile. But with it, even the simplest talent bears fruit. Consistency is what polishes, what organizes, what delivers results with stability and honor. And listen carefully. The God-fearing man knows that there is no consistency without memory. It is necessary to remember what was promised, what was begun, what was dreamed. Those who forget the purpose grow weary of the routine. That is why I tell you, speak to align, record to remember, work to deliver, and honor to remain. These 4 anchors preserve the heart and protect the path. Those who live without spiritual memory, without records of what they have already received and declared before the Lord, easily get distracted, confused, lost. But those who remember, who revisit commitments, who honor the word given, build a legacy. Because God does not take pleasure in those who shrink back, but in those who remain with faithfulness. Consistency also has a financial effect. It builds margins. See, the man who works regularly, who delivers with quality, who reviews and improves, gradually earns trust in the market, stability in finances, and predictability in results. Contracts come, referrals happen, reputation is established, and all this not because he shouted or forced, but because he remained. The compound effect of consistency is like spiritual interest. It grows slowly, but explodes over time. Each client well served, each project well done, each commitment fulfilled. All this adds up. And when the harvest comes, it seems like magic to those watching from the outside. But the wise man knows it was seed, it was soil, it was sweat, it was consistency. There is also a profound truth about bonds, about the relationships that sustain life. Love does not survive only on words. It needs repeated gestures, constant presence, renewed care, true listening. The God-fearing man understands that even affection wears out if not watered, that even trust breaks if not maintained. Consistency in bonds is the daily decision to choose the other, to renew the covenant, to forgive again, to love again, to build again. Not with explosions of emotion, but with silent faithfulness. For the bond that lasts is not the one that begins beautifully. It is the one that survives the seasons. And the one that survives the seasons is the one that was cultivated every day, even when it seemed that nothing was growing. At last I will tell you a parable, the river and the meadow. The river is never in a hurry, but it passes every day, at the same time with the same rhythm. And with this it prepares the soil, waters the roots, forms the bed. When the flood comes, it does not destroy, it blesses, because it finds a meadow ready. So it is with the constant man. He does not panic and he does not despair, but fulfills with firmness what must be done. And when opportunity comes, when the window opens, he is ready. Nothing is by chance for the constant man. Everything is prepared. That is why I tell you, be like the river, silent, steady, faithful. Because when abundance comes, you will not be caught by surprise. You will be found prepared. And God loves to reward those who have prepared with faithfulness. Let us now open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29, and also in chapter 10, verses 4 through 7. In my words it is written, "Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings, and not before obscure men." And also, "Lazy hands make a man poor, but diligent hands bring wealth. A prudent son gathers in summer, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgrace. Blessings crown the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked hides violence. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot." What I taught here, wise man, is that skill is not just a talent. It is the fruit of dedication, discipline, daily training. The man who perfects himself in his calling, who delivers with care, who honors his commitments. This man will be noticed, will be honored, will be called to high places. See that it is not just about working much, but about working with excellence, with consistency, with reverence. This is what builds reputation, what opens doors before the great, what sustains blessings for generations. I will now jump to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 18 through 26. There I wrote about something that many experience but few understand. "I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or foolish? Yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill. This too is meaningless." So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless, and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. But to the person who pleases God, he gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. What I meant to teach here, God-fearing man, is that work without purpose, without contentment, without communion with God, becomes vanity. It is possible to accumulate and still lose everything, to work much and yet live exhausted, to appear rich and still be empty. The difference is in pleasing the Lord. When he is at the center, work becomes a source of joy, of legacy, of true fulfillment. Very well. Now I will read to you from Song of Songs, chapter 5, verses 2 through 8. Here I speak of a moment of neglect, of delay, that caused loss. "I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night." But I responded, "I have taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I have washed my feet. Must I soil them again?" My beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. The watchmen found me. They beat me. They bruised me. What this means, wise man, is that when we neglect the right time, when we prioritize comfort instead of commitment, we risk losing what was precious. Here I am not speaking only of a romantic bond, but of every door that God opens. There are moments when he knocks and waits. If we delay, the opportunity goes. Constancy includes readiness, vigilance, sensitivity to time. A wise heart recognizes the moment and acts without delay. I will now go back a few pages to Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 11 through 18. There it is written, "Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large and your silver and gold increase, then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He led you through the wilderness, he fed you with manna, he taught you that man does not live on bread alone. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms his covenant which he swore to your ancestors. God-fearing man, here is a deep warning. True prosperity is not just an achievement, it is a responsibility. When God blesses, he expects remembrance. When he prospers, he expects humility. Constancy must not be broken by abundance. The wise man remains faithful in little, but also faithful in much. He remembers, he acknowledges, he honors. Because it is not the strength of the arm, it is the grace of the Lord that sustains the inheritance. And to close this block of readings, let us now go together to the book of Psalms, chapter 19, verses 7 through 11. Words of my father David. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. They are more precious than gold. They are sweeter than honey. By them your servant is warned. In keeping them there is great reward. This is a powerful truth, wise man. All true constancy is born from the word. It is not passing motivation. It is eternal instruction. It is not just human discipline, it is spiritual obedience. The law of God renews, sustains, directs. And when you keep it, when you honor it, when you submit to it, there is reward. Not necessarily in applause, but in peace. Not only in achievements, but in integrity. Because the man who walks in the word remains, and he who remains bears fruit. This is the promise, and this is the direction that I, Solomon, give you today. God-fearing man, what you build with excellence in silence, heaven observes with honor. The routine no one sees, the backstage that seems small, are exactly the places where God works your firmness, your constancy, your root. The world applauds results, but the Lord rewards processes. Therefore remember, every day you fulfill what you promised. Every moment you choose to be faithful even without applause. Every detail you review with care, even without recognition. You are building something invisible to men, but eternal before God. The compound effect of constancy does not happen at once, but it truly happens. The repetition of good choices, the practice of correct habits, the coherent management of your schedule and your words. All this, accumulated, forms reputation, financial margins, relational trust, and inner peace. And this peace, wise man, has no price. It is worth more than any salary because it is inheritance. The man who honors the little is the one God entrusts with the much. This is not a formula. It is a spiritual and practical truth. See well, the constancy is not just in strength, but in permanence. It is like a seed that, when sown in the ground, does not grow by shouting, nor by anxiety. It grows because the root goes deep, and it only goes deep because every day it receives the right water, the right light, the right care. So it is with the constant man. He rises when others give up. He delivers when others only promise. He guards what was entrusted when others have already lost direction. The world is full of grand projects interrupted, brilliant ideas that never became action, beginnings that never reached the middle. But the God-fearing man learns that greatness is many times doing well the simple every day until the end. Reputation is not built with posts, nor with speeches. It is formed in the silence of fulfillment, in the weight of every sustained yes, in the responsibility assumed and finished with care. That is why constancy builds margins. Emotional margins, financial margins, relational margins. When you become predictable in your excellence, you generate trust. And when there is trust, doors open without you having to force them. This applies to the workplace, to your home, to your life before God. The wise man is constant not because he feels, but because he knows. And this knowing is not arrogance, it is reverence. It is remembering that every well-lived day is one more brick in the temple of your existence. Do not be deceived into thinking that constancy is rigidity. On the contrary, constancy is flexible enough to adapt, but firm enough not to abandon what matters. That is why it also builds inner peace. The man who fulfills his daily journey, who reviews his mistakes with honesty, who respects his limits, That man sleeps in peace because he is not in debt to his purpose, because he is not betraying his conscience, because he is not abandoning what God entrusted to his hands. And this peace, or this stillness that no one can take away, is the greatest treasure of those who walk in faithfulness. You do not need extraordinary results to have this peace. You need an ordered heart and consistent steps. God-fearing man. Constancy is like a covenant with the future. Every time you choose to speak with clarity, you are building trust. Every time you record a plan with wisdom, you are protecting your memory against forgetfulness and deception. Every time you work with care, you are saying, I respect the task God has given me. And every time you honor, even when no one is watching, you remain. Look, many want to arrive quickly, but few are willing to remain. But it is the one who remains, who reaps, who teaches, who transforms. Therefore, do not be in a hurry to appear. Have zeal in remaining. Because in the right time, God exalts the humble. The repetition of small actions, when guided by wisdom, becomes a river. A river that waters your home, your faith, your reputation, your work. And even if to men's eyes it seems slow, what matters is that this river never dries up. When the flood comes, and it will come, the field of your land will be prepared. You will know how to receive. You will know how to multiply. You will know how to protect, because you were trained in constancy, in the dawns where no one applauded, in the days when you did the right thing without anyone seeing. And I tell you, wise man, it is better to be constant than explosive. It is better to be faithful in the ordinary than unstable in the extraordinary. God entrusts great things to those who are reliable in the small. There is something precious in maintaining a rhythm, a sacred cycle between speaking and doing, planning and executing, reviewing and learning. The God-fearing man who develops this rhythm lives in covenant with time. He does not waste days, because he knows how to count them. He does not neglect the seasons, because he knows the value of the seed and the power of the harvest. This does not make him an automatic man, but a wise man. And a wise man is always a man who builds. He does not wait for the perfect day to begin. He begins. And then he continues, because he knows that faithfulness to the process is, in itself, a form of worship. Finally, I want you to keep this in your heart. Constancy is a testimony. It preaches without words. It disciples without imposition. It edifies without noise. When someone sees your life and says, this man is trustworthy, this man fulfills what he promises, this man delivers what he speaks, you are glorifying God, because your character is a sermon, your commitment is a hymn, your routine is an offering, and your perseverance is a testimony that the Lord truly governs your life. So, speak to align, record to remember, work to deliver, and honor to remain. This is the life that the wise man lives before God, and this is the inheritance that no one can steal. Before we move on, I want to lead you to a moment of communion. Just breathe, close your eyes for a moment, and silently say to the Lord, teach me to be a constant man, a diligent worker, someone who honors with excellence everything the Lord has entrusted to me. Say this prayer for yourself. Because the wisdom I am sharing with you is not to be a seed thrown on rocks, but in fertile soil. And if you can, share this video with another man, someone you know who needs this same grace, the same wisdom, the same courage. And if you have come this far, write in the comments, I honor the Lord for everything He has entrusted to me. I will know right away that you reached this point, and I will recognize you for it. The river of wisdom does not dry up, wise man. Everything you have heard up to this point is not just a set of reflections. It is a path, a safe trail of applied wisdom, a practical direction for your daily life. What the scriptures reveal to you today is that there are three plans that need to walk together: that of practice, that of purpose, and that of relationships. And all of these are built on constancy. In practice, we learn that speaking serves to align, but it is doing that builds. That care is not anxiety, but criterion. That zeal is not rigidity, but responsibility. That the silence of the diligent worker shouts louder than the speeches of those who only plan without fulfilling. The Bible has shown us that constancy is like a river. It irrigates the soil, fertilizes the bonds, protects the borders. Routine, when lived with purpose, becomes honor before God. In the plan of purpose, Ecclesiastes teaches us that there is a right time for everything, and that labor, when lived at the right time and in the right spirit, becomes a gift, a reason for joy, a channel of contentment. When the God-fearing man works with constancy, anxiety loses strength. When he understands that he does not need to control everything, but needs to obey in everything, the peace of the worker visits his house, and God's blessing establishes his paths. And in relationships, the book of Song of Songs revealed to us that bonds are vineyards, and vineyards are not maintained by impulse or passion, but by zeal, presence, and commitment. The bonds that last are those that receive constant care, like a garden watered every day, even when there are no visible flowers. The man who desires to build a solid reputation, faithful bonds, a balanced family, needs to understand that excellence in relationships requires the same diligence applied to work. Live, therefore, as a wise man before God. Speak with sobriety. Fulfill with excellence. Work with care. Treat your bonds with honor. Build each area of your life with reverence and remain firm. The secret is not in the strength of a great moment, but in the faithful repetition of the right steps, day after day, week after week. This is the wisdom that transforms, that prospers, that sustains. The Word has already given you the way. Now turn intention into delivery, plan into practice, dream into responsibility. May your commitment be visible in the details, and may your faith be embodied in your schedule, in your words, in your rhythm. If this journey is edifying you, if the Word has found fertile soil in your life, then stay with us here on this channel. Click like to subscribe. And remember, the real fruit is in continuous practice. It is not enough to understand. It is necessary to live. Until the next word, wise man.